and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Alberto Leopaldi, and tonight we're going to spend some time together to go through the main steps of one of the most important Italian dishes and probably one of the most famous ones, which is pasta alla carbonara. Before we actually start to go through the recipe, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information about myself. As you noticed from my hand gesture, I'm Italian. And I'm living in Basel, so at the moment we are actually here in Basel. This is a little Italian enclave that I have created within Switzerland. I moved here to Basel 4 years ago to join Viking, and I am now working in Viking for 4 years, and I am working in the Onboard operations department. So together with the Onboard operations team, we are responsible to support the crew on board and the management on board in making sure that every time you come on board one of our river vessels, you receive the best possible service. Before joining Viking, actually, I was working in a quite different industry. I have training as a biomedical engineer, so I studied in Italy. I lived in Milano, in fact, since I'm 1 year old. And I've done all my studies in Italy till I moved to the Netherlands, specifically to Eindhoven, to do my PhD. So I finished my PhD in the Netherlands and worked there for about 4 years in the biomedical industry before having the opportunity to join Viking, which was of course quite a strange move for quite a lot of friends and for myself as well, as it was a complete change in industry, but it was definitely one of the best moves I could do for my professional career and to join such a nice and growing company. The dish we're gonna present tonight is pasta alla carbonara, and pasta alla carbonara is one of probably the most iconic and famous dishes in Italy and of course in all the world. But of course it's also one of the dishes that has undergone probably the highest number of interpretations and, if I may say so, not always with such a great outcome. So we will see tonight that it's in fact such an easy and simple dish. We just need to follow a few key steps to make sure that we get the best possible pasta alla carbonara. So like in every dish, of course, the key is to have the right ingredients, and like every Italian dish, the key is actually the simplicity and the respect for ingredients. So what you see here is we have some spaghetti, of course, very good quality. We have some pecorino romano. This is a sheep cheese that comes from the area of Rome. It's very salty, very tasty, and quite dry. So it's somehow similar to Parmesan, but stronger in taste, of course, because of the sheep milk. We have, of course, some black pepper, and we have guanciale. Guanciale is somehow similar to bacon, but it's different. And it's very important actually for carbonara and for a lot of other types of pasta, which I'm going to describe in a second, to use guanciale and not bacon. So guanciale is coming from pork and is in fact the cheek. The cheek is called in Italian guancia, and that's why this is called guanciale. And compared to bacon, which comes of course from the belly of the pig, this is more fat, as you can see, and it's also a little bit harder. So it releases the fat while cooking, and it helps us to get the carbonara more tasty because it has a stronger taste. And of course we have our eggs. Now with these ingredients we're gonna make carbonara, but the interesting thing is actually that in Italian cuisine, with these ingredients, we have already a lot of variety of dishes that can be made. One of the oldest dishes in Italian cuisine is actually pasta alla cacio e pepe. So it's a pasta that is made only with these three ingredients: pasta, pecorino, and pepper. This was a pasta that the farmers used to make because they were just requiring pecorino, that of course can be kept for a long time, and pasta, and a little bit of pepper. So this is the first pasta, and is also typical from the Roman tradition. The second pasta is an extension of the cacio e pepe and is pasta with pecorino, pepper, and guanciale. This is called pasta alla gricia. Also very good, very tasty, and without tomato. If now to these ingredients, so to the pasta alla gricia, we add tomato sauce, then we have pasta alla matriciana. Pasta alla matriciana is probably another very famous dish that most of you will have had the chance to taste. It's very good, and it's again the same ingredients, just with the addition of tomato. And of course, if to this base of ingredients we add eggs, we're gonna get pasta alla carbonara. So as you can see, with just basically 3 ingredients, 4 if we add the pepper, we have already 4 different combination of pasta just with the addition of tomato. And that's the beauty, I think, of Italian cuisine, whereby with the respect for the ingredients and the combination of just a few of them, we can get very tasteful pastas and very different ones as well. So something also interesting to know about the carbonara is the history of the pasta carbonara as such. Whereas pasta cacio e pepe, pasta alla gricia and pasta alla matriciana were actually invented hundreds of years ago, and there is trace of these dishes in very old recipe books, there is no trace of pasta alla carbonara actually until 1940, 45, 46 in recipe books. And the reason for that is that pasta alla carbonara was actually invented in Rome when Rome was liberated by the American army. So when Rome was liberated by the US army, in Rome there was a scarcity of food. And US soldiers had as a food supply bacon and egg. And so in that moment there was a scarcity of food, and someone in Rome thought of cooking a pasta with bacon, with egg. In that case was apparently also egg powder that was supplied to the US army. And so this is how the carbonara was created. We don't know exactly who invented it, but then in the next few years this pasta became extremely popular, and with the addition of pepper, of course, it became the carbonara as we know it today. So this is really, I think, a nice story which I also wasn't aware of, and that connects really, I think, the United States and Italy in the creation of probably one of the most iconic dishes of all times. So like with every good meal, the key is of course the food, but it's also as important, if you are a wine lover, to find a good combination of food and wine. And today I have chosen 2 bottles which I think pair very well with the carbonara. One is a white wine and one is a red wine. So the good news is already that whether you are a white wine lover or a red wine lover, you're gonna find a wine that pairs well with carbonara. And the reason for that is that carbonara is actually quite a fat dish and very rich in taste. So it goes well with a nice, dry, but medium body white wine, and also with medium body red wine. And here I have chosen as a white wine a Falanghina, which is a grape variety typical of Italy, typical of the center of Italy. This Falanghina specifically is from Molise, and it's a very nice choice with carbonara. And here I have, of course, a classic pairing with carbonara, which is a Chianti. It's a wine from the Tuscany region, and specifically this bottle is a very good one and comes from Barone di Casoli, which is one of the oldest wine producers in the world. I think it's one of the top 4, and the wine producer actually started producing wine in 1140 something. So it's really a very good Chianti. This is a 2013 Riserva Gran Selezione, so it's a really nice pairing that goes with the carbonara. So I hope you are as hungry as I am, so let's get to cook. The first step is to prepare the guanciale. So we take the guanciale, and in this case, of course, I need to remove the skin of the guanciale. So I peel it very nicely. You need quite a sharp knife to do that. And you see how fat the guanciale is in fact. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut it in slices. They shouldn't be too thin, as we like the guanciale to stay in big chunks, and it will anyway retract because it will lose a lot of fat. So I would say 5 millimeters to 1 centimeter even. Voila, we lost one piece, but it's okay. And now we cut it into smaller chunks, but as I said, not too small. We want the guanciale to stay in big pieces for the carbonara. Or at least that's the way I like it. So actually pasta is really a tradition in my family. We are, I would say, a family of pasta addicts, and this dates back to my grandfather. And there is quite an interesting story about it. When my father was military in Italy during the Second World War, the food at the militaries in Italy was not, for the army, was not really fantastic. So he was writing letters to my grandmother. And in one of these letters, he got my grandmother to promise him that if he would ever make it back from the war, she would cook pasta for every single day of his life. And that's actually what happened. Pasta al pomodoro, so tomato pasta, technically. And this is what happened. He luckily made it back from the war, and since that day he has eaten pasta every single day of his life for lunch. Pasta with tomato. And so this is just to give you an idea of how much of a pasta addict we are in our family. Okay. So we have now cut the guanciale, and the first step, of course, of the procedure is to make sure that we cook the guanciale with a low flame. So I have here prepared a pan where I'm gonna put the guanciale, and we just let it cook now with a low flame for about 15 to 20 minutes. So it needs to really release the fat and roast, but without such a high flame. So it needs to take its time. So you see, we are now slowly cooking the guanciale. Very important, we don't need any oil. You will see that the guanciale is basically releasing its own fat, so we don't need to add anything in the pan. We just put it with a low to middle flame and leave it here to roast for about 15 minutes, 15 to 20. So the next step in the preparation is actually, while the guanciale is frying, to prepare the pecorino. So we have here a piece of pecorino. We need to grate it very finely. So what I'm gonna do is, rather than grating it by hand, I'm gonna use an electric grater, because the finer the pecorino is, the better it is, because it's gonna amalgamate better with the eggs. So I'm now cutting the pecorino very coarsely, because I'm then gonna put it together in a mixer. Now it's gonna be noisy. We want to make sure that it's really finely grated, so we're gonna grate it as much as possible. And in the meanwhile, you can see the guanciale looks fantastic. Perfect. You can now place the pecorino in here. And now I need to actually share with you a secret. I know that I said Italian cuisine is all about tradition and that one would follow the recipes, but even though the original recipe says that you should only use pecorino for the carbonara, I actually like to add a little bit of parmesan. So what I'm gonna do now is cut a little bit of this Parmigiano 48 months and grate it together with the pecorino. And also here it's important that you buy a very good quality of Parmesan that is, aged for long enough, and this is going to really give the right character to your carbonara. Actually, a little bit more. Perfect. So now the guanciale is ready. You see it has nicely roasted and has released all the fat. And we're gonna now separate the guanciale from the fat because we're gonna keep the guanciale aside and use the fat actually for the pasta. So I have a small trick that I use. I usually put a small spoon on the side that helps drain the fat. Let's make sure that this goes quite fast. And I can now take the guanciale and put it in a small pan on the side. And this is important because otherwise the guanciale is going to become overcooked. So we're going to add it back to the pasta at the end. So now the pasta, the water for the pasta is about to boil, the guanciale is ready, so we're gonna prepare the eggs. As a general rule, for half a kilo of pasta you would need 4 yolks, and I usually add 1 entire egg to give a little bit more runniness to the liquid. So we start by separating the eggs, the yolk from the white. So I'm not a professional chef, so this is usually a part where I might have some troubles, but let's see. I'm gonna have to do 6 of them. It's quite important that you try to keep only the yolk, and even if you have to fight with the white part, because it has quite an impact, of course, on the. I forgot to take some place to put. 2. 3. By the way, some of you might have noticed the Viking bowl that I'm using. It's really nice. I really love it, from our nice long ships. It's used as a bread bowl on board. Up. I lost this one, but I will recover it. Voila. Five. Doing a little bit of a mess here, but as you see, I'm an engineer. 6. And the last one is the easiest one, because I'm gonna do 600 grams of pasta, so the last one I actually need it entire. Perfect. So now that we have separated the egg yolks and added the entire egg, we're gonna prepare the egg sauce for the carbonara. So we start by breaking out the eggs with a fork. You just need to work them like if you would do a frittata or an omelette. You can do this with a fork, or you can do this with the other tool, which I don't know the name of. And once the egg is actually nice, liquid and running, we start to add the cheese. And it's important that the cheese is finely grated because it will easily mix with the egg. And this needs to become a really thick paste, because at the end we're going to use the water of the pasta to make this more liquid again. So at this point in time, it doesn't have to be a liquid sauce, but it needs to be actually quite thick. So we can add more cheese. I always like to make a little bit more cheese because some people like to add it then on top of the carbonara as such. Now with the cheese we add black pepper. And one needs to be quite generous with black pepper, of course. I like it quite coarsely grinded, but we can also have actually a mix of finely coursed and thickly coursed. So you see it's still quite liquid, so you can actually take a little bit more cheese. I will put the right amounts in the final recipe. Usually I go by eye, I have to admit. So this comes usually with a little bit of experience. And I've had a few carbonaras before. Perfect. Now we have a nice thick sauce. So we just need to prepare the pasta. And then we're gonna mix the pasta with the sauce at the very end, adding the water of the pasta with the starch to make it more runny. So now the water is boiling, I've already salted it, so we add the pasta. I'm gonna do now about 600 grams, more or less. And it's important now to cook the pasta. This takes 11 minutes, so we're gonna cook it only for 9, because the last 2 minutes we're gonna cook the pasta with the fat of the guanciale. So we give it a little bit less cooking time, and we're gonna finish it in the pan. So now the pasta is almost ready, but I'm gonna take it off the cooking water, and I'm gonna finish it the last minutes in the fat of the guanciale. Can bring a little bit of water, it doesn't hurt at all. As you can imagine, I'm not alone tonight, otherwise I wouldn't cook this much pasta for myself. And it's important that we keep the water of the pasta, because we're going to use it for the next steps of the recipe. I'm doing a little bit of a mess, but this, they used to say that great chefs are not necessarily the cleanest ones. So hopefully that's gonna be true also for me. I don't know if it's true. So if the pasta is a bit dry, you can add a little bit of the cooking water already here, so to keep cooking it like a risotto. And then of course it's important that the carbonara is finished not in a hot pan. So as soon as this pasta is ready, we're gonna move it to a cold bowl where we're gonna mix it with the egg. And that's important because otherwise the egg will become overcooked. And the egg needs to stay runny, of course. I'm gonna add another bit of water. And this of course gives the taste of the guanciale to the pasta, to the spaghetti, and makes the pasta really yummy. So as you can see, there is not much water, there is a little bit of starch, which is coming from the cooking water of the pasta, and this is gonna help us to make the sauce real nice and creamy. So I'm now gonna take a cold container and I'm gonna put the pasta inside. So the pasta is now ready. And now the tricky part comes, because what is important is to make sure that we create a pasta that is running. So I have here my cooking water of the pasta, and I have here the egg. So I will now add the egg, and then you need to very quickly mix the pasta. And adding some cooking water, slowly, not too much, not all at a time, to make sure that the pasta gets nicely amalgamated. Now, of course, this is quite a lot of pasta, but you see that it's getting creamy now. We can still add the rest of the egg. You see, there is no oil. It's the cooking water of the pasta that makes the pasta creamy. And this is, of course, quite important. So you see there is a cream. The egg is not cooked, so it's not like a frittata, so to say, or an omelette. And now, of course, we add the last touch, which is the guanciale. There we go. And it's very important with carbonara to eat it quite fast, because of course if the pasta cools down, then the egg becomes quite dry. So it's very important when you cook carbonara to straight away eat it as fast as possible. So I think the pasta is now ready to be plated. So I'm gonna plate it right now. Let me just do one thing. Move it around, so you can see the plating as well. For the plating, usually I use one of these and help myself with a big spoon to make sure that in the plate the pasta actually looks nice. Just put the last piece of pepper. Some people like an extra bit of cheese. And then the last step is, of course, to pour yourself a good glass of wine and enjoy your carbonara. Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed this time with me tonight, and I'm now going to leave you with Karine again, that is going to help us explore a bit more of Italy, including some of the key destinations and food and wine. And I hope to see you soon on a Viking River cruise. So thank you again, buon appetito, and have a great evening.